Hello everyone, I'm Serenity. Today, I wanted to do something new for you. I am going to start a new series where I will be reading a book to you. I've wanted to do this for quite a while, but I haven't found something that I really have been interested in reading for you until now. So let me go ahead and show you the book. It's this right here. This Assassin's Creed Unity. It is written by Oliver Bowden. I think that's how you say it. Like I said, I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, but I couldn't find anything game related that I really liked. And it's pretty much just a, book written about these two characters from the Assassin's Creed game. So, let me read you the back of it, just so that you get an idea of what this will be about. Okay, so it says, I have been beaten, deceived, and betrayed. They murdered my father, and I will have my revenge at whatever cost. The year 1789. The magnificent city of Paris sees the dawn of the French Revolution. The cobblestone streets run red with blood as the people rise against the oppressive aristocracy. But revolutionary justice comes at a high price. At a time when the divide between the rich and the poor is at its most extreme, and a nation is tearing itself apart, a young man and a woman fight to avenge all they have lost. Soon, Arno and Elise are drawn into the centuries-old battle between the assassins and the Templars, a world with dangers more deadly than they could have ever imagined. So, that's the back. I've always liked being read to, especially when I was younger, when, I had teachers that would read to me, or, my mom. So I thought this would be a fun series for you guys. And I'm definitely a fan of the Assassin's Creed games. Even if you're not, I hope that this video is still relaxing for you, and that you enjoy me reading it to you. I'm only going to read a few chapters to start off with, and then you guys can let me know what you think of it, and if you'd be interested in me reading more, or, reading something else. So, let's go ahead and start reading. Okay, so there's a very beginning part in here. He had a thin face, framed by a spoil of almost pure white hair, looking like a daintyish but down at the heel doctor in his long black cape and tall shabby hat, the ruff of the shirt spilling over his collar. He carried a doctor's bag that he placed to the ground and opened with one hand, all without taking his eyes off of us as he took something from it, something long and curved. Then he smiled and drew the dagger from its sheath, and it gleamed wickedly in the dark. "Stay close, Elise," Mother whispered. "Everything's going to be all right." I believed her because I was an 8-year-old girl, and of course I believed my mother. But also because, having seen her with the wolf, I had good reason to believe her. Even so, fear nibbled at my sides. "What is your business, monsieur?" she called levelly. He made no answer. "Very well, then we shall return to where we came from," said Mother loudly, taking my hand and about to depart. At the alley entrance, a shadow flickered, and a second figure appeared in the orange glow of the lantern. It was a lamplighter. We could tell by his pole he carried. Even so, Mother stopped. "Monsieur," she called to the lamplighter cautiously, "I wonder if I might ask you to call off this gentleman bothering us." The lamplighter said nothing, going instead to where the lamp burned and raised his pole. Mamma started. "Monsieur," and I wondered why the man would be trying to light a lamp that was already lit, and realized too late that the pole had a hook at the end, the hook that they used for dousing the flame of the candle inside. "Monsieur." The entrance was plunged into darkness. And then here's the title page. Okay, now the first chapter. Extracts from the Journal of Arno Dorian, September 12th, 1794. On my desk lies her journal, open to the first page. It was all I could read before a flood tide of emotion took my breath away, and the text before me was splintered by the diamonds in my eyes. Tears had coursed down my cheeks as thoughts of her returned to me. The impish child racing through the hallways of the great palace of Versailles. The firebrand I came to know and love in adulthood. Tresses of red hair across her shoulders. Eyes intense beneath dark and lustrous lashes. She had the balance of an expert dancer and the master swordsman. She was as comfortable gliding across the floor of the palace beneath the desirous eye of every man in the room as she was in combat. Behind those eyes lay secrets. Secrets I was about to discover. I picked up her journal once again, wanting to place my palm and fingertips to the page, caress the words, feel that on this page lies every part of her very soul. I begin to read. Next chapter. Extracts from the Journal of Elise de la Serre. April 9th, 1778. My name is Elise de la Serre. My father is Francois, my mother Julie, and we live in Versailles. Glittering, beautiful Versailles, where neat buildings and grand chateaux reside in the shadow of the great palace, with its lime-tree avenues, its shimmering lakes and fountains, its exquisitely tended topiary. We are nobles, the lucky ones, the privileged. For proof, we need only take the 15-mile road into Paris. It is a road lit by overhanging oil lamps, because in Versailles we use oil lamps, but in Paris the poor use tallow candles, and the smoke from the tallow factories hangs over the city like a death shroud, dirtying the skin and choking the lungs. Dressed in rags, their backs hunched either with the weight of their physical burden or of mental sorrow, the poor people of Paris creep through streets that never seem to get light. The streets stream with open sewers where mud and human effluent flow freely, coating the legs of those who carry our sedan chairs as we pass through, staring wide-eyed out the windows. Later we take gilded carriages back to Versailles and pass figures in the fields, shrouded in mists like ghosts. These barefooted peasants tend noble land and starve if the crop is bad, virtual slaves of the landowners. At home I listen to my parents' tales of how they must stay awake to switch sticks at frogs, whose croaking keeps landowners awake. How they must eat grass to stay alive. How the nobles are exempt from paying taxes, excused from military service, and spared the indignity of the corvée, a day's unpaid labor working on the roads. My parents say Queen Marie Antoinette roams the hallways, ballrooms, and vestibules of the palace, dreaming up new ways to spend her dress allowance, while her husband, King Louis XVI, lounges on his lettre de justice, passing laws that enrich the lives of nobles at the expense of the poor and starving. They talk darkly of how these actions might foment revolution. My father has certain associates. As advisors, Monsieur Criquin Lafreniere, Charles Gabriel Servet, and Madame Levesque, the crows, I call them, with their long black coats, dark felt hats, and eyes that never smiled. Have we not learned the lesson of the croquants? Says my mother. Mother had told me about the croquants, of course. Those peasant revolutionaries of 2 centuries ago. It would appear not, Julie, father replies. There is an expression to describe that moment you suddenly understand something that had previously been a mystery to you. It is the moment when the penny drops. As a small child, it never occurred to me to wonder why I learned history, and not etiquette, manners, and poise. I didn't question why Mother joined Father and the crows after dinner, her voice raised in disagreement to debate with as much force as they ever did. I never wondered why she didn't ride side saddle, nor why she never needed a groom to steady her mount, and I never wondered why she had so little time for fashion or court gossip. Not once did I think to ask why my mother was not like other mothers, not until the penny dropped. She was beautiful, of course, and always well dressed, though she had no time for the manner of finery worn by the women at court, of whom she would purse her lips and talk disapprovingly. According to her, they were obsessed with looks, status, with things. They wouldn't know an idea if it hit them between the eyes, Elise. Promise me you'll never end up like them. Intrigued, and wanting to know more about how I should never end up, I used my vantage point at the hem of Mother's skirt to spy on these hated women. What I saw were over-powdered gossips who pretended they were devoted to their husbands, even as their eyes roamed the room over the rims of their fans, looking for unsuspecting lovers to snare. Unseen, I would glimpse behind the powdered mask, when the scornful laughter dried on their lips, and the mocking look died in their eyes. I'd see them for what they really were, which was frightened. Frightened of falling out of favor, of slipping down the society ladder. Mother was not like that. For one thing, she couldn't have cared less about gossip. And I never saw her with a fan, and she hated powder, and she had no time whatsoever for coral beauty spots and alabaster skin, her sole concession to fashion being shoes. Otherwise, what attention she gave her comportment was for one reason and one reason only, to maintain decorum. And she was absolutely devoted to my father. She stood beside him, at his side though, never behind him. She supported him, was unswervingly loyal to him, backing him in public, even though behind closed doors they would debate, and I would hear her cooling his temper. It's been a long time, though, since I last heard her debating with father. They say she might die tonight. Next chapter. April 10th, 1778. She survived the night. I sat by her bedside, held her hand, and spoke to her. For a while, I had been under the delusion that it was me comforting her, until the moment she turned her head and gazed at me with milky but soul-searching eyes, and it became apparent that the opposite was true. There were times last night when I gazed out of the window to see Arno in the yard below, envying how he could be so oblivious to the heartache just feet away from him. He knows she's ill, of course, but consumption is commonplace. Death at a doctor's knee, an everyday occurrence, even here in Versailles. And he is not a Delaserre, he is our ward, and thus not privy to our deepest, darkest secrets, nor our private anguish. Moreover, he has barely known any other state of affairs for most of his time here. To Arno, Mother is a remote figure attended to on the upper floors of the chateau. To him, she is defined purely by her illness. Instead, my father and I share our turmoil via hidden glances. Outwardly, we take pains to appear as normal, our mourning mitigated by 2 years of grim diagnosis. Our grief is another secret hidden from our ward. We're getting closer to the moment that the penny dropped. In thinking about the first incident, the first time I really began to wonder about my parents, and especially my mother, I imagine it like a signpost along the road towards my destiny. It happened at the convent. I was just 5 when I first entered it, and my memories of it are far from fully formed. Just impressions, really. Long rows of beds, a distinct but slightly disconnected memory of glancing outside a window crowned with frost and seeing the tops of the trees rising above billowing skirts of mist, and the Mother Superior. Bent over and bitter, the Mother Superior was known for her cruelty. She'd wander the corridors of the convent with her cane across her palms, as though presenting it in a banquet. In her office, it was laid across her desk. Back then, we would talk of it being your turn. And for a while, it was mine. When she hated my attempts at happiness, begrudged the fact that I was swift to laughter, and would always call my happy smile a smirk. The cane, she said, would wipe that smirk off my face. Mother Superior was right about that. It did, for a while. And then one day, Mother and Father arrived to see that Mother Superior on what matter, I have no idea, and I was called to the office at their request. There, I found my parents turned in their seats to greet me, Mother Superior standing from behind her desk, the usual look of undisguised contempt on her face, a frank assessment of my many shortcomings, only just dry on her lips. If it had been Mother alone to see me, I should not have been so formal. I would have run to her and hoped I might slip into the folds of her dress and into another world out of that horrible place. But it was both of them, and my father was my king. It was he who dictated what modes of politeness we abided by, and who had insisted I was placed in the convent in the first place. So I approached and curtsied and waited to be addressed. My mother snatched up my hand. How she even saw what was there, I had no idea, since it was by my side. But somehow she caught a glimpse of the marks left by the cane. "What are these?" she demanded of the Mother Superior, holding my hand towards her. I had never seen the Mother Superior look anything less than composed. But now, I would say that she paled. In an instant, my mother had transformed from proper and polite, just what was expected of a guest of the Mother Superior, to an instrument of potential anger. We all felt it, the Mother Superior the most. She stammered a little. As I was saying, Elise is a willful girl and disruptive. "So she's caned?" demanded my mother, her anger rising. Mother Superior squared her shoulders. "How else do you expect me to keep order?" Mother snatched up the cane. "I expect you to be able to keep order. Do you think this makes you strong?" She slapped the cane to the table. Mother Superior jumped and swallowed, and her eyes darted toward Father, who was keeping watch with an odd, unreadable expression, as though these were events that did not require his participation. "Well, then you are sorely mistaken," added Mother. "It makes you weak." She stood, glared at the Mother Superior, and made her jump again as she slapped the cane to the desk a second time. Then she took my hand. "Come along, Elise." We left, and from then on, I had tutors to teach me schoolwork. I knew one thing as we bustled out of the convent and into our carriage for a silent ride home. As Mother and Father bristled with things left unsaid, I knew that ladies did not behave the way my mother had just done. Not normal ladies, anyway. Another clue. This happened a year or so later, at a birthday party for a spoiled daughter in a neighboring chateau. Other girls my age played with dolls, setting them up to take tea. Only a tea for dolls, where there was no real tea or cake. Just little girls pretending to feed tea and cake to dolls, which to me, even then, seemed stupid. Not far away, the boys were playing with toy soldiers, so I stood to join them, oblivious to the shocked silence that fell over the gathering. My nursemaid Ruth dragged me away. "You play with dolls, Elise," she said, firmly but nervously, her eyes darting as she shrank beneath the disapproving stare of other nursemaids. I did as I was told, sinking to my haunches and affecting interest in the pretend tea and cake, and, with the embarrassing interruption over, the lawn returned to its natural state. Boys playing with toy soldiers, the girls with their dolls, nursemaids watching us both, and not far away a gaggle of mothers, high-born ladies who gossiped on wrought-iron lawn chairs. I looked at the gossiping ladies and saw them with mother's eyes. I saw my own path from girl on the grass to gossiping lady, and with a rust of absolute certainty realized I didn't want that. I didn't want to be like those mothers. I wanted to be like my own mother, who had excused herself from the gaggle of gossips and could be seen in the distance, alone at the water's edge, her individuality plain for all to see. I had a note from Mr. Wetherall. Writing in his native English, he tells me that he wishes to see Mother and asks that I meet him in the library at midnight to escort him to her room. He urges me not to tell Father. Yet another secret I must keep. Sometimes I feel like one of those poor wretches we see in Paris, hunched over beneath the weight of expectations forced upon me. I am only 10 years old. Next chapter. April 11th, 1778. At midnight, I pulled on a gown, took a candle, and crept downstairs to the library, where I waited for Mr. Wetherall. He had let himself into the chateau, moving like a mystery, the dogs undisturbed, and when he entered the library, so quietly that I barely even heard the door open and close, he crossed the floor in a few strides, snatched his wig from his head, the cursed thing, he hated it, and grasped my shoulders. They say she's fading fast, he said, and needed it to be hearsay. She is, I told him, dropping my gaze. His eyes closed, and though he was not at all old, in his mid-30s, the same age as Mother and Father, the years were etched upon his face. Mr. Wetherall and I were once very close, Mother had said before. She had smiled as she said it. I fancy that she blushed. It was a freezing cold day in February the first time I met Mr. Wetherall. That winter was the first of the really cruel winters, but while in Paris the river Seine had flooded and frozen, and the poverty-stricken were dying in the streets, things were different here in Versailles. By the time we awoke, the staff had made up the fires that roared in the gates, and we ate steaming breakfast and wrapped up in furs, our hands kept warm by muffs as we took morning and afternoon strolls in the grounds. That particular day, the sun was shining, although it did nothing to offset the bone-chilling cold. A crust of ice sparkled prettily on a thick layer of snow, and it was so hard that Scratch, our Irish wolfhound, was able to walk upon it with his paws, without his paws sinking in. He had taken a few tentative steps, then on realizing his good fortune, given a joyous bark, and dashed off ahead while Mother and I made our way across the grounds and to the trees at the perimeter of the south lawn. Holding her hand, I glanced over my shoulder as we walked. Far away from our chateau shone in the reflection of sun and snow, its windows winking. Then, as we stepped out of the sun and into the trees, it became indistinct, as though shaded by pencils. We were farther out than usual, I realized, no longer within reach of its shelter. Do not be alarmed if you see a gentleman in the shadows, said Mother, bending to me slightly. Her voice was quiet. I clutched her hand a little tighter at the very idea, and she laughed. Our presence here is no coincidence. I was 6 years old then, and had no idea that a lady meeting a man in such circumstances might have implications. As far as I was concerned, it was simply my mother meeting a man, and of no greater significance than her talking to Emmanuel, our gardener, or passing the time of day with Jean, our coachman. Frost confers stillness on the world. In the trees it was even quieter than on the snow-covered lawn, and we were absorbed by an absolute tranquility as we took a narrow path into the depth of the wood. "Mr. Wetherall likes to play a game," said Mother, her voice hushed in honor of the peace. "He might like to surprise us, and one should always be aware of what surprises lie in store. We take into account our surroundings and cast our expectations accordingly. Do you see tracks?" The snow around us was untouched. "No, Mamma." "Good. Then we can be sure of our radius. Now, where might a man hide in such conditions?" "Behind a tree." "Good, good. But what about here?" She indicated overhead, and I craned my neck to gaze into the canopy of branches above, the frost twinkling in shards of sunlight. "Observe everywhere. Always." Mother smiled. "Use your eyes to see. Don't incline your head if at all possible. Don't show to others where your attention is directed. In life, you will have opponents, and those opponents will attempt to read you for clues as to your intentions. Maintain your advantage by making them guess." "Will our visitor be high in the tree, Mamma?" I asked. She chuckled. "No, as a matter of fact, I have seen him. Do you see him, Elise?" We stopped. I gazed at the trees in front of us. "No, Mamma." "Show yourself ready," called Mother, and sure enough, a few yards ahead of us, a gray-bearded man stepped from behind a tree, swept his tricorn from his head, and gave us an exaggerated bow. The men of Versailles were a certain way. They looked down their noses at anybody not like them. They had what I thought as the Versailles smiles, hoisted halfway between bemused and bored, as though constantly on the verge of delivering the witty quip by which it seemed all men of court were judged. This man was not a man of Versailles. The beard alone said to that. And though he was smiling, it was not a Versailles smile. Instead, it was soft but serious, the face of a man who thought before he spoke, and made his words count. "You cast a shadow, Freddie," Mother smiled, as he stepped forward, kissed her hand, then did the same to me, bowing again. "The shadow," he said, and his voice was rough, uncultured, the voice of a seaman or soldier. "Oh, bloody hell, I must be losing my touch." "I hope not, Freddie," laughed Mother. "Elise, meet Mr. Wetherall, an Englishman, an associate of mine. Freddie, meet Elise, an associate, like the crows." No, he was nothing like them. Instead of glaring at me, he took my hand, bowed, and kissed it. "Charmed, mademoiselle," he rasped, his English accent mangling the words mademoiselle in a way that I couldn't help but find charming. Mother fixed me with a serious expression. "Mr. Wetherall is our confidant and protector, Elise. A man to whom you may always turn when in need of help." I looked at her, feeling a little startled. "But what about Father?" "Father loves us both dearly, and would gladly give his life for us. but men as important as your father need shielding from their domestic responsibilities. This is why we have Mr. Wetherall, Elise, that your father need not be troubled by those matters concerning his womenfolk. An even more significant look came into her eyes. Your father need not be troubled, Elise. Do you understand? Yes, Mamma. Mr. Wetherall was nodding. I am here to serve, mademoiselle, he said to me. Thank you, monsieur, I curtsied. Scratch had arrived, greeted Mr. Wetherall excitedly, the two of them evidently old friends. Can we talk, Julie? Said the protector, replacing his tricorn and indicating that the two of them might walk together. I stayed some steps behind, hearing brief snatches and disjointed snippets of their hushed conversation. I heard Grand Master and King, but they were just words, the kind I was used to hearing from behind the doors of the chateau. It's only in the years since then that they've taken on a much greater renaissance. And then it happened. Looking back, I can't remember the sequence of events. I remember seeing Mother and Mr. Wetherall tense at the same time as Scratch bristled and growled. Then my mother wielded. My gaze went in the direction of her eyes, and I saw it there, a wolf standing in the undergrowth to my left, a black and gray wolf standing absolutely still in the trees, regarding me with hungry eyes. Something appeared from within Mother's muff, a silver blade, and in 2 quick strides she had crossed to me, had swept me up and away, and deposited me behind her, so that I clung to her skirts as she faced the wolf, her blade outstretched. Across the way, Mr. Wetherall held a straining, growling Scratch by the scruff of his neck, and I noticed that his other hand reached for the hilt of a sword that hung at his side. Wait, commanded Mother. An upraised hand stopped Mr. Wetherall in his tracks. I don't think this wolf will attack. I'm not so sure, Julie, warned Mr. Wetherall. That is an exceptionally hungry-looking wolf you've got there. The wolf stared at my mother. She looked right back, talking to us at the same time. There's nothing for him to eat in the hills. It's desperation that has brought him to our grounds. But I think this wolf knows that by attacking us, he makes an enemy of us. Far better for it to retreat in the face of impeccable strength and forage elsewhere. Mr. Wetherall gave a short laugh. Why am I getting the whiff of a parable here? Because, Freddie, Mother smiled, there is a parable here. The wolf stared for a few more seconds, never taking its eyes from Mother, until at last it dipped its head, turned, and slowly trotted away. We watched it disappear into the dress, and my mother stood down, her blade replaced in her muff. I looked at Mr. Wetherall. His jacket was once again buttoned, and there was no sign of his sword. And I came one step closer to the penny dropping. I showed Mr. Wetherall to her room, and he asked that he see her alone, assuring me that he could see himself out. Curious, I peered through the keyhole and saw him take a seat by her side, reached for her hand, and bowed his head. Moments later, I thought I heard the sound of him weeping. And now I'm going to end it here. I hope that you guys enjoyed me reading from this. I hope you enjoyed the story so far. you have any requests of one that you would like me to read that is game related, let me know, and I'll read it. I hope that this video relaxed you. And hopefully by now you're either asleep or feeling very relaxed and ready to fall asleep. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video.